Hey everybody, welcome to V5 or our V15, our extended cut. I'm your host Jarod, and I'm back with Tom Josephson of TCP Software, who's the Senior Director of Solution Consulting, who is back by popular demand. The discovery over demo conversation was one that the audience wanted to pick up on and expand on. So Tom, here you are, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. My pleasure. We were talking before we hit the record button, which could be a show in itself, but we were talking about kind of the origins of discovery. You know, I'm a father, you're a father, and we talked about how there's this magical age of kids when they just get curious about things and they ask questions that, you know, we as parents have to answer. Sometimes we answer well, sometimes not so well. You made this connection to being a lot like an SC. Can you tell the audience what that conversation was about?
My daughter is 5, and she's in that stage that if you have kids, you'll recognize this, where she asks about something and immediately follows it up with why. And for me, I love this. This comes from 2 places. Well, one place is being a former teacher. Whenever somebody showed curiosity in anything, you would want to reward that curiosity and explain it and go deep into detail. And then the other aspect of it is, as an SC, when someone asks a question, this is one of the most common things I have to coach out of SCs, especially if they're coming from a different part of the business and they're new to being an SC. You know the software really, really well. And they ask, hey, can you do this? The answer is yes. And you should stop at yes. And you really, really want to dig in and figure out and just show them everything. Not just demonstrate what you know about it, but really demonstrate the power of the software that you're showing. However, we know that you don't do that. You can't do it. And there's a number of reasons why you can't do that. For me, it's, A, you're going to get off track on the demo, and you might run out of time to show other things. The other reason is, especially if you're showing admin tools, and there's like 50 little things that I can toggle on and off. Something that is actually has a great user interface and very intuitive, all of a sudden looks really complex. And so you have to resist that urge. However, with my daughter, it's like, all right, I'm going to get into all of the complexities. I need you to sit down for the next 45 minutes while I explain truly why the sky is blue. And you have to bear with me because I'm going to have to Google some of these things. So you just can't quite do that.
One of my hacks has been you can literally prompt the AI to explain it to you like a 5-year-old. Yeah. So you can explain it to a 5-year-old, and you're a genius. You struck a nerve with me in a good way on the notion of, yeah, when the question is, can the software, can the solution do this? The answer is yes. And you want to leave it there and not go off track. How do you help folks reconcile this in a world where the competitive environment would dictate that, like, we're going to win on this feature, we're going to win on this capability? How do you talk to the team about striking that balance? I think the competitor in all of us wants to show it because, yes, it's cool, but also we lose on this, or we win if we do this the right way. How do you temper that energy? I can't imagine it's easy.
It is really, really hard. I want to show you this because it's cool. And the only reason why I want to show it to you is because it's cool. And what I try to remind SCs of is the why. What's the value of it? And if you can't articulate that instantaneously, you don't have the argument for showing it. Now, there are situations where you need to show that admin tool. You need to get into it. That could actually make the difference of getting the deal across. However, if this is not couched in value, if it's not couched in the why, you're going to be wasting your time and you're going to be hurting yourself. The other thing is, what I tell SCs is, if you're not sure what it is they're getting at, and this is, I think, a lot of reasons why SCs go into it, especially if they're coming from support, implementation, or the training teams, which is a good place to find great SCs, is they want to show you all of the options. When the better way is, it could be yes, but there's more to it. And again, this is reading the room, reading their reaction. If they seem taken aback by that, ask a follow-up question. That's where I always come to. It's like, okay, hey, does it do X, Y, and Z? It does, or no, not in the way you described it, but what are you trying to accomplish with that? And I've seen so many times the SC doesn't ask that question and they show 5 different ways to do it when The second or the third way was the one that mattered, and everything else was superfluous. And now you've wasted that time. You've made it look more complex. They want the one thing. You've got to find out what that one thing is. So I always say the answer should be yes and move on. Or if you're not sure that's going to land or if that's not working, ask follow-up questions. This is a great opportunity to engage further. It's a great opportunity for that prospect now to own this and really feel like they're driving it to something that they want. And ultimately what that does is if they're doing that, they get those warm and fuzzies. They think they're driving the demo and they're deeply engaged and they're going to listen to what you say. And that's the big thing, that you have to keep their attention. And this is a great opportunity to do that. That's one strategy. And then the SEs are like, well, are they going to believe me if I just keep saying yes? And I actually learned this from an SE who was on the team a couple of years ago. He made a great point, is you might want to throw in a no, because then it just shows you're not just saying yes all the time, but a low stakes no. Now that's tricky. That's next level SE. The other thing that I tell SEs when it comes to saying yes, they might push you on it, like, show me. Okay. And you show them once, and if they're satisfied, every time they ask you a question and you say yes, they're going to buy it. Every time. And really, when you think about the prospects, when they ask these questions, at least in my experience, they don't need to know how it's configured. They don't need to know how it's done. A lot of times, especially if they're going off a checklist, off an RFP, it is checking a box. So if you over explaining it, they're like, great, I just needed to know that you could do it.
It sets the tone as to why I think you reinforce discovery so much, because, the more I know about the buyer or the buyer team, the easier it is for me to identify what's a low stakes no. I can identify what really needs to be highlighted here without running the risk of maybe not showing a thing that I think is really cool that means nothing to them. So it does all tie, I think, back to what you mentioned in the beginning on why if you're not doing discovery, and to our pre-call conversation, rewarding the curiosity, these things fall down.
Yeah, you hit on a point really important to me. Most of these conversations, if you're doing discovery right, you've already had them. To me, again, discovery is super complicated. It takes more than one person, and it takes a lot of skill to execute this really effectively, repeatedly. And a lot of times those no's, they should be coming. You want them to come up in the discovery. There's a rep said this, there are two winners in every deal. The person who wins it and the first one out. So is that no a deal breaker? Because if this is a deal breaker for you, I don't want to waste your time with a demo. And if it's not, then let's talk about how we can mitigate that. And to me, this is the perfect example of a no, low stakes no. You drop that first no, and then you realize the reason why they do it this way is because of some antiquated system, some antiquated workaround. And you're like, oh, wait, you don't need to do that at all. Here's how we handle the use case that caused that. I'll show you when we get to the demo. Now, those are some of the moments where I know I've won. I'm going to prove this to you when we get to the demo. I'm going to show you a better way to do this, an easier way to do this. So now that no is not just a yes, but an emphatic yes, a better yes.
Yeah, no, I love that. Because again, if you're just going to buy software to automate a lot of the same processes you've had, it's not a lot of fun. The best software purchases I've made as a buyer have been the ones that just obliterate old processes. But you're right. Those have been the moments when it's just like mind blown, take my money, but let's do it in a way that makes sense. If we don't have to do that anymore, everybody's life gets easier.
I tell this story at our sales boot camp. Sometimes you're selling to people who already automated a lot of the processes, so they understand. But we have a lot of prospects who are doing time and attendance manually. And what I tell people is they're going to want to solve the wrong problem. And you've got to help them re-engineer how they come to a solution. The analogy I always give them is in the 90s, your phone was bolted to a wall or it was in a room, before you had cordless phones. And I'm trying to sell them a smartphone. They come to me and like, all right, here's my problem. The family phone is in the kitchen. and I don't want my mom listening to my conversations. I need a longer cord. And I'm trying to sell you a smartphone. The cord isn't the problem. You need a phone where you can take it anywhere. It's not just a cordless phone where you've got a 20-foot range. No, you can take this phone anywhere in the world. And not only that, it has a computer in it. But let me explain why the longer cord isn't what you need.
Fascinating, because I think 98% of those conversations would have been close loss, product fit. Tell us what percentage of time you're most involved in the sales process. So how do you guys actually coordinate that dance between the initial click and there's some interest in what you guys do, all the way to a point where your SC knows exactly what to say, show, and do when they show up for that call, to a degree?
Yeah, I ask that the SCs are in the process as soon as possible. And it might be a BDR who has a conversation and says, all right, I know you want to see a demo. Let's move to discovery first. And then they book it with the rep, and then we fold in an SC. And the rep will usually give a phone call before, introduce themselves. That first general discovery, I want the SC there. There's a number of reasons. Number one, to me, an SC in the discovery, one of the most important things among the 50 other things that we're doing in a discovery is we're building rapport. They're getting to know us. We're building trust. Yes, the salesperson is doing that, but let's be real. They don't trust the rapport that they're building with the salesperson. The salesperson's like, oh, have you had a really snowy winter? Me too. Great. How many times do I have to hear this conversation? And the prospect's the same way. Whereas the SC, they don't do that. They play the foil to the rep who's doing that. And I've had SCs, they come in and the rep has done the whole weather speak, or what's your sports team of the moment. And the SC is like, oh, they just bring me in. I'm just the tech nerd. Or I come from implementation, so I've seen a lot, and I just want to make sure what aligns with what you're doing. And that rapport building in that one sentence has built more rapport than talking about weather for the last 15 minutes ever could. You've built that trust, even though you're asking basic questions about the business. It depends on the SC. It depends how you want to position the SC. The SC can be positioned as a technical consultant or as a business consultant. When I think about SCs who come from implementation, I know the technical piece, but it's also, hey, I've worked with this organization and this business that did it very similar to y'all. What we did for them was this, this, and this. Let me show you that in the demo. Oh man, they eat that up every time. And again, that rapport, even though it could be like the most basic thing in the software, the most general piece of the software, now it's, hey, they can point to a success story. And this is the person that did it. This is the person that's going to shepherd me along in the sales process. Oh, that goes so far. And that's that rapport building. That's the only thing we accomplish in the demo, in the discovery. It is absolutely worth it to me. And that's why we bring the SC in early. And when I started, we didn't do that. Sometimes the SCs would just come in for the demo. And we started moving to our KPIs were our win rate. And I said to the SCs, do you trust all of the reps to do your discovery for you? And the resounding response was, absolutely not. I bet if you ask SCs that, do you trust every rep in your organization to do everything that is necessary in a discovery to lead an effective demo? I bet 100% of them would say, no, not all of them. And then the last piece, why I think it's so important for an SC to be there, is to own it. Me and the rep, we're a team working together, and we both came to the conclusion, this is the value that's going to be most important to them. These are the things that are going to be most important to them. Have this be a discussion. Work together, collaborate. It goes so much further. And then the last piece, if you own it, if you have these conversations with your reps, argue and push back and come to a consensus, I have a lot of respect for that. A lot of respect for that.
It's very powerful. I asked the question because I think a lot of folks listening would say, yeah, I see the value, I do it, but practically, how do I start to implement it? How do I start to get the scale and the efficiencies gained to participate and kind of shift that discovery to the left? Like demo, demo to win, wow them, showcase. But if I wasn't there from the start, this gets a hell of a lot harder. You're working with the customer full life cycle. I worked with Brad as my SC when I bought it. Brad checked in when we onboarded. Brad has checked in through every value realization meeting we've had. When that thing he showed us in the demo last year, we still can't quite get right. And he just said, nope, you got to do it this way. Maybe that's when they go into the admin settings, but they want that report through the life cycle. And I love the notion of when Brad can say, I've worked with customers like you, and I'm going to show you what they did. And this is the crazy part, Tom, even if that's not real, it's a much better experience than the general demo. It's the, here's how Acme solved this problem you said you had with this capability or this solution or this process and use case. And I think we've gotten so far away from that. I yearn to see that type of connection in a sales process, but you outlined it in a way wherever you were selling, I'd probably buy it. So
thank you. It's interesting because we have that language built in. We call ourselves, a lot of places, solutions consultants, to be consultative. I'm sure we've all uttered this and we've all heard it. We want to partner with you. And unless you are actually consulting, bringing up what your past experiences, talking about how you'll work with them or how your implementation team will work with them, you're just paying them lip service. So when you say these things that we've been told to say, we know it's effective, really commit to it. And that gets back to that ownership. And found the best SCs really want to come back to that, have those use cases, and they build up a library. And the thing they do best is they've got this mental Rolodex of all the customers in every different industry that they've implemented, and they're talking to somebody and they have that Rolodex, whether it's conscious or subconscious, ready to roll when they take a look at that customer, say, okay, here's what I'm expecting, and here's how I'm going to drive that story back. And even if it's not necessarily what they did for that customer, we've been able to solve your problems. Yes, you're going to have a secret sauce, but a lot of the problems we've encountered, and we can help with it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, I know we can go all day. This is awesome. I appreciate this because I think it's something more folks need to hear, put into practice. We obviously want to lift the whole discipline. Discovery's been a popular conversation, but thank you for giving us some of the practical elements of how to do it. Of course, the why behind it and the results you're achieving through it. So thank you for spending some time with us today. We appreciate you.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
You're listening to The Unexpected Lever. For additional resources, check out Vivint.com. Got a soapbox you'd like us to talk about longer? Let us know by messaging me, Jarod Greene, on LinkedIn.